Recognizing the signs that a relationship is facing challenges is crucial for maintaining emotional well-being and understanding the dynamics at play. Sometimes, when we're deeply involved with someone, it's easy to overlook subtle shifts in their behavior, especially if they begin to withdraw or become disengaged. The truth is, relationships require continuous effort and mutual support, but when things start to unravel, it can be difficult to pinpoint the exact moment of change. Whether it's a lack of communication, emotional detachment, or an inability to resolve conflicts, these signs often indicate that something deeper may be at play. It's not always about a single event or argument, but rather the gradual shift in priorities, interests, or emotions. Understanding these signs can help you navigate the complexities of a relationship and decide whether it's worth putting in the work to fix it, or if it's time to reevaluate the bond altogether. In this piece, we'll delve into 16 common signs that your partner may be emotionally distancing themselves. These signs are not always obvious, but once recognized, they can help you assess where the relationship stands and whether it's truly fulfilling. If you notice any of these patterns, it may be time to have an open conversation and seek clarity for the future. 1. They stop initiating conversations or plans. When someone stops initiating conversations or plans, it can feel like a significant shift in the dynamic of the relationship. This change, whether subtle or sudden, can leave the other person feeling confused, rejected, or uncertain about where they stand. The reasons behind this behavior can vary, but often it stems from emotional fatigue, shifting priorities, or dissatisfaction within the relationship. One of the primary causes of someone stopping the initiation of conversations is emotional exhaustion. Relationships, whether romantic, familial, or friendly, require energy and effort from both sides. When one person feels emotionally drained, they may withdraw and stop putting in the effort to maintain the connection. This withdrawal can manifest as a lack of initiative in reaching out, either through texts, calls, or making plans to meet up. The person may be dealing with their own personal struggles, such as stress, depression, or burnout, which makes them less inclined to initiate social interactions, even with those they care about. Another reason someone might stop initiating conversations is a change in their priorities. People's lives are constantly evolving, and sometimes their focus shifts to other areas like work, personal growth, or other relationships. When this happens, they may unintentionally neglect the relationships that once held importance. They might not be consciously avoiding the person, but the lack of initiation reflects a shift in where their attention lies. This can be particularly difficult for the other person to understand, as it can feel like a sudden disconnect, even if the change is gradual. In some cases, the lack of initiation stems from dissatisfaction within the relationship itself. If there has been unresolved tension, misunderstandings, or unmet needs, one person might stop initiating conversations as a form of self-protection or as a way to communicate their dissatisfaction. This is often a passive-aggressive response where the person avoids confrontation but still expresses their frustration through silence. Over time, this can create a sense of distance, and the relationship may start to feel strained. Miscommunication can also play a role. Sometimes one person may assume that the other person is no longer interested or invested because they're not taking the lead in conversations or plans. In reality, the person may still care deeply, but is unsure how to communicate that effectively. They might be waiting for the other person to reach out, leading to a cycle of missed connections and unmet expectations. The shift from active participation to withdrawal can leave the other person feeling rejected or unimportant. It can create a sense of insecurity, especially if the person is unsure whether the lack of initiation is due to something they've done wrong, or if it's simply a reflection of the other person's internal struggles. This can lead to feelings of confusion and sadness, as the person may question their own worth or the future of the relationship. When faced with this situation, it's important to communicate openly. If you feel that the other person has stopped initiating, try reaching out and expressing your concerns in a non-confrontational manner. Sometimes, a simple conversation can help uncover the reasons behind the behavior, whether they are related to personal issues, a shift in priorities, or dissatisfaction within the relationship. However, it's also important to recognize that some relationships evolve, and it may be necessary to reassess whether both parties are still invested in maintaining the connection. 2. They seem distracted or distant. When someone seems distracted or distant, it can create a noticeable change in the way they interact with you. This shift might be subtle at first, but over time, it becomes harder to ignore. Their attention is often elsewhere, and their behavior no longer mirrors the warmth or engagement that once existed. This can leave the other person feeling uncertain, rejected, or even anxious about the relationship. One of the most common reasons for someone appearing distracted or distant is stress. Whether it's work-related pressure, personal struggles, or external factors, stress can cause people to retreat into themselves. They might not be fully present during conversations or social gatherings, as their mind is preoccupied with the weight of their worries. This can make them appear distant or detached, even though they may still care about the person they're with. The emotional and mental load they're carrying might prevent them from being able to fully engage, causing them to seem distracted, even though they may not intend to hurt anyone. Another reason for this behavior could be emotional detachment or avoidance. If someone is experiencing emotional difficulties, such as unresolved trauma or pain, they may begin to withdraw in order to protect themselves. In this state, they may struggle with being vulnerable or opening up to others. Their physical presence might still be there, but their emotional presence feels far removed. They might avoid deep conversations or seem distant because they're not ready to confront their own emotions or share them with others. Shifting priorities can also play a role. Over time, people's interests and focuses can change. When someone becomes deeply involved in a new hobby, a job, or another relationship, they may start to shift their energy and attention away from the people they once prioritized. This isn't necessarily a reflection of a lack of care, but rather a change in what is currently occupying their mental and emotional space. As a result, they may seem distracted or distant because their attention is divided, and they no longer feel the need to make the same effort in the relationship. In some cases, people may also become distant due to a sense of dissatisfaction or frustration in the relationship. If there have been unresolved issues, feelings of neglect, or unmet needs, the person might distance themselves as a form of self-preservation. Rather than addressing the underlying problem directly, they pull back emotionally to protect themselves from further disappointment or hurt. This kind of emotional withdrawal can feel like a slow fade, where the person is physically there but emotionally checked out. Sometimes, this change in behavior can be attributed to communication issues. If someone is not sure how to express their thoughts or emotions, they might start to retreat into themselves rather than engage. They may feel misunderstood or unsure about how to navigate certain conversations, which can cause them to appear distracted. The lack of clear communication can lead to a disconnect where the other person feels as though they're not being heard or valued. The experience of dealing with someone who seems distracted or distant can be challenging. It can leave you questioning what's wrong or whether you've done something to cause the change. The lack of clarity can create feelings of insecurity and doubt, and it may lead you to overthink the situation. The key in such scenarios is communication. While it might feel uncomfortable to approach someone who seems distant, expressing your feelings openly and non-judgmentally can help bring clarity. Sometimes, the person might not even realize how distant they've become, and a simple conversation can help bridge the emotional gap. 3. They avoid quality time together. When someone starts avoiding quality time together, it can feel like a significant shift in the relationship. Activities that once brought you closer, whether it was spending time on weekends, sharing meals, or simply enjoying each other's company, now seem to be met with reluctance or outright avoidance. This behavior can leave you questioning what has changed and whether the relationship is still a priority for the other person. One of the main reasons someone might avoid quality time is due to stress or overwhelm in their life. When a person is feeling mentally or physically drained, they may prioritize time alone to recharge rather than spend it with others. They might not want to appear irritable or distracted, so they avoid social interactions that might demand their energy. While this may have nothing to do with the relationship itself, it can make the other person feel neglected or unimportant. This kind of avoidance is often more about the individual needing space to deal with their own stresses rather than a reflection of the relationship. Another possibility is emotional detachment. If someone is struggling with feelings of dissatisfaction or disconnection within the relationship, they may start to avoid spending quality time together. Rather than confronting difficult emotions or addressing concerns, they pull back and distance themselves. This withdrawal might be gradual, but over time, it becomes clear that the person is no longer as invested in maintaining the bond. It could be that they no longer feel the same level of emotional connection, and avoiding quality time together is a way of expressing their discomfort without having to articulate it directly. Sometimes, people may also avoid quality time because they feel overwhelmed by the expectations or pressures of the relationship. If the person feels like they are being asked to fulfill emotional or social needs that they are not prepared to meet, they may withdraw as a form of self-preservation. They might avoid spending time together to avoid the pressure of having to perform or meet certain expectations. This can be especially true if one person is more invested in the relationship than the other, or if there are unrealistic expectations about what the relationship should look like. Another factor that could lead someone to avoid quality time is shifting priorities. As people grow, their interests and priorities can change. What once felt like a fulfilling use of time, whether it was watching movies together, going on outings, or just chatting, might no longer hold the same appeal. A person might find themselves more interested in pursuing new hobbies, spending time with other friends, or focusing on work or personal goals. As their life and interests evolve, they might unintentionally or consciously begin to prioritize other things over spending time with the person they've been avoiding. Additionally, the avoidance of quality time could signal deeper issues in the relationship, such as a lack of trust, unresolved conflicts, or a general sense of dissatisfaction. If the relationship has been marked by ongoing arguments, miscommunications, or emotional tension, the person may avoid quality time to avoid confronting these issues. They may not feel comfortable or safe enough to open up or engage in meaningful ways, leading to an overall sense of withdrawal. For the person on the receiving end, it's easy to feel hurt, rejected, or confused when quality time is avoided. It may feel like their presence no longer matters, or that the connection has weakened. However, it's important to approach the situation with understanding and communication. Rather than jumping to conclusions, it's helpful to express your feelings and concerns directly. Ask the person if there's something going on in their life that's affecting their behavior, or if there's something in the relationship that's causing them to pull away. Sometimes the person may not even realize how much they're avoiding, and a candid conversation can help address any underlying issues and bring clarity to the situation. 4. They no longer prioritize your needs. When someone no longer prioritizes your needs, it can feel like a deep shift in the relationship. The person who once made an effort to listen, care, and fulfill your emotional, physical, or practical needs now seems distant or indifferent. It's as if the balance that once existed has been disrupted, and you're left questioning whether the relationship is still a priority for them. This change can leave you feeling overlooked, unimportant, or even undervalued. One of the common reasons why someone might stop prioritizing your needs is a change in their own priorities. Life circumstances, such as a new job, new relationships, or personal struggles, can shift a person's focus away from the relationship. When someone becomes absorbed in their own challenges or pursuits, they may unintentionally stop considering the needs of others, including their partner or loved ones. This shift isn't necessarily a reflection of a lack of care, but rather a result of their attention being divided or consumed by other aspects of their life. As a result, your needs might not be given the same level of attention they once were, leaving you feeling sidelined. Another reason could be emotional fatigue. Relationships require consistent emotional effort. And if someone has been stretched thin, whether due to personal or external stresses, they may begin to withdraw emotionally. When a person feels overwhelmed or exhausted by life, they might stop considering the needs of others as they focus solely on their own survival or emotional well-being. This self-preservation can lead to them neglecting the emotional or physical needs of others, even if they don't intend to hurt anyone. The person may not have the capacity to give as much as they once did, which can feel like they no longer prioritize you. A more concerning reason for this change could be dissatisfaction within the relationship itself. If someone feels that their own needs have been unmet, or that they are no longer happy in the relationship, they may begin to withdraw and stop prioritizing the needs of the other person. This could happen for many reasons, such as communication breakdowns, unmet expectations, or a general sense of dissatisfaction with how the relationship has evolved. In this case, the lack of prioritization may be a subtle way of expressing that they no longer feel the same level of investment in the relationship, either because they're unhappy or because they have emotionally checked out. Sometimes, people also stop prioritizing others because of a lack of appreciation or acknowledgement. If they feel that their own contributions or efforts have been overlooked or undervalued, they might begin to withdraw and stop making the same effort to prioritize the other person's needs. This can create a cycle of emotional neglect, where both people feel unseen and unappreciated, leading to further distance and disengagement. In certain cases, it may be that the person has started to take the relationship for granted. Over time, relationships can sometimes fall into a routine where the initial excitement and effort to meet each other's needs begin to fade. If someone assumes that the other person will always be there, they might stop actively prioritizing their needs because they feel secure that the relationship will endure regardless. This complacency can make the other person feel neglected, as their needs are no longer being met with the same level of consideration or care. Regardless of the reason, when someone no longer prioritizes your needs, it can be incredibly painful. You might feel invisible, unimportant, or as though your presence no longer matters. It's important to recognize that this behavior is often a sign of underlying issues, whether within the relationship or within the individual. Open and honest communication is key to addressing these concerns. Rather than letting resentment or confusion build, it's essential to express how you feel and seek understanding. Ask the person if something has changed, whether it's related to external stressors, personal challenges, or feelings about the relationship. Sometimes the lack of prioritization is a result of miscommunication or misunderstanding, and a conversation can help clear the air and realign both people's needs and expectations. If the issue is deeper, however, it may require both people to reassess their commitment and the direction of the relationship. 5. They're quick to anger or frustration. When someone is quick to anger or frustration, it can create an emotionally charged atmosphere that is difficult to navigate. The person who once seemed calm or patient now reacts impulsively or aggressively to minor issues, leaving the other person feeling on edge, confused, or even fearful. This shift in behavior can be alarming, as it signals that something deeper might be affecting the person's emotional state or the relationship itself. One possible reason for this quickness to anger or frustration is stress. Life's pressures, whether related to work, personal life, or financial struggles, can weigh heavily on a person, causing their tolerance levels to drop. When someone is overwhelmed, they might become more irritable and prone to snap at others, even over small issues. The emotional load they're carrying can make it difficult for them to respond calmly, and they may feel as though they're constantly running on empty. This doesn't necessarily mean they're angry at the person they're reacting to, but rather that the stress of their life is spilling over into their interactions. Another reason could be emotional exhaustion. If someone has been in a prolonged state of emotional strain, whether from a difficult situation, personal trauma, or ongoing conflicts, they may find it harder to manage their emotions. What might have once been a minor inconvenience or irritation is now perceived as a major trigger. the person might feel like they've reached their breaking point and have little emotional bandwidth left to deal with challenges calmly. This emotional depletion can cause them to lash out more easily as their patience and ability to cope have been worn thin. In some cases, a person's quickness to anger or frustration might be related to deeper dissatisfaction or unresolved issues within the relationship. If there has been ongoing tension, unmet needs, or unresolved conflicts, the person may begin to express their frustration outwardly. Rather than communicating their concerns directly or working through the issues in a healthy way, they might resort to anger as a defense mechanism. This can be a passive-aggressive response to feeling unheard or unsupported, and it may reflect that the person is emotionally disengaging from the relationship. A sense of powerlessness or a lack of control in one's life can also contribute to this quickness to anger. If someone feels like they have little control over their circumstances, whether in their personal life, work, or relationships, they might lash out as a way to reclaim a sense of power. This frustration can often be misplaced or misdirected, with the person taking their anger out on those closest to them. The sense of helplessness they may feel in other areas of life could lead to heightened sensitivity to perceived slights or inconveniences, causing them to react quickly and intensely. Sometimes people who are quick to anger or frustration may have a history of difficulty managing their emotions. Certain individuals are more predisposed to intense emotional reactions due to their personality or past experiences. They may have been raised in an environment where emotional regulation wasn't modeled, or they may have faced past trauma that makes them more reactive to stress or conflict. For these individuals, anger can be a learned or automatic response to discomfort or emotional pain. Regardless of the reason, dealing with someone who is quick to anger can create a tense and exhausting dynamic. The person on the receiving end might feel like they're walking on eggshells, always trying to avoid triggering the other person's frustration. Over time, this can erode trust and communication, as it becomes difficult to have open and honest conversations without fear of an outburst. If you're facing this situation, it's important to address the issue with care. Approach the person calmly and without judgment, acknowledging that something seems to be affecting their emotional state. Rather than reacting to the anger with more anger, try to create a safe space for them to express what's going on underneath the frustration. Ask if there are external factors contributing to their mood, or if there are underlying issues that need to be addressed. Sometimes the person may not even realize how frequently they're reacting with anger, and an open conversation can help them reflect on their behavior. If the quickness to anger continues or escalates, it may indicate a need for deeper self-reflection, or even professional help, such as therapy or counseling. Emotional regulation and conflict resolution are important skills that can be developed, and seeking support can help both individuals understand the root causes of the anger and work towards healthier communication patterns. 6. They stop showing affection. When someone stops showing affection, it can feel like a cold, emotional distance has settled between you. Affection, whether through words, physical touch, gestures, or time spent together, is a key way that people express love and care. When this behavior changes, it can be disorienting and hurtful, leaving the other person wondering what went wrong or if they are still loved and valued. One possible reason for a lack of affection is emotional withdrawal. If someone is going through personal difficulties, such as stress, depression, or anxiety, they may retreat inwardly. Their ability or desire to connect with others can diminish, leaving them emotionally distant. They might not even realize the impact their withdrawal has on the other person, as they're too consumed with their own internal struggles. In such cases, the absence of affection isn't necessarily a reflection of a lack of love, but rather a symptom of emotional exhaustion or an inability to express emotions due to their personal struggles. Another reason for a decrease in affection could be dissatisfaction in the relationship. Over time, relationships can evolve, and the dynamics between two people can shift. If there has been ongoing tension, unresolved issues, or unmet needs, one person may begin to emotionally disengage. When this happens, they may stop showing affection as a way to cope with their dissatisfaction. It can be a sign that they no longer feel emotionally connected or that they're not happy with the direction the relationship is heading. Rather than confronting the underlying issues, they may withdraw affection as a passive response. Sometimes a person may stop showing affection because they feel taken for granted or unappreciated. In relationships where one partner feels that their efforts and contributions go unnoticed, they might begin to pull back emotionally. When affection isn't reciprocated or valued, the person might stop offering it altogether. This can happen when there is a lack of appreciation for their efforts, or if they feel like their emotional needs are being ignored. The absence of affection, in this case, is a response to feeling overlooked or unimportant. External factors such as stress, fatigue, or a busy schedule can also contribute to a decrease in affection. When someone is overwhelmed with work, family obligations, or personal concerns, they may not have the emotional bandwidth to show affection. The demands of daily life can sometimes take precedence, leaving little room for the emotional gestures that once defined the relationship. This doesn't necessarily mean they no longer care, but rather that their attention and energy are being consumed by other responsibilities. A lack of physical affection can also be a result of changing preferences or intimacy issues. In some cases, as relationships progress, partners may find that their needs or desires in terms of intimacy change. One partner may become less interested in physical affection, or they might be experiencing emotional or physical barriers to intimacy, such as a decrease in libido or past trauma. This can cause a disconnect, where one person continues to crave affection, while the other may no longer feel the same desire or ability to provide it. The lack of affection in such cases might be an unspoken reflection of deeper emotional or physical issues that haven't been addressed. Sometimes, people simply grow apart over time. As individuals evolve and change, their connection with others can diminish. In these cases, affection fades not because of external factors, but because the emotional bond has weakened. This can happen when two people no longer share common interests, values, or emotional connections, leading one or both to withdraw. The absence of affection in this scenario is a sign that the relationship is no longer fulfilling or that it has reached its natural conclusion. For the person on the receiving end, the sudden or gradual absence of affection can feel hurtful, confusing, and isolating. It can create feelings of rejection and make one question their worth or the strength of the relationship. If the lack of affection becomes a pattern, it's important to address the issue directly. Having an open and honest conversation about how the absence of affection is affecting you can help bring clarity. Sometimes the person may not even realize how much their actions are impacting you, and a discussion can open the door to healing and reconnecting. However, if the lack of affection is due to deeper issues, such as emotional withdrawal, dissatisfaction, or personal struggles, it may take time, patience, and effort to resolve. It's important to approach the situation with empathy, understanding that the absence of affection may stem from something that needs to be addressed individually or within the relationship. If necessary, seeking help from a therapist or counselor can be a constructive way to work through the underlying causes of emotional or physical distance and rebuild affection and intimacy in the relationship. 7. They don't make future plans with you. When someone stops making future plans with you, it can feel like a clear sign that they're not as invested in the relationship as they once were. Future plans are an important part of any connection, as they symbolize commitment, hope, and the intention to continue building a life together. When a person stops including you in their future, it can create a sense of uncertainty and leave you questioning where you stand in the relationship. One reason for this shift could be that the person is no longer emotionally committed or has lost interest in the relationship. Making future plans is often a way of showing that someone sees a lasting connection with you, But if they've started to pull away emotionally, they may no longer feel the desire to plan ahead. This could manifest in subtle ways, such as avoiding discussions about vacations, long-term goals, or even basic commitments like attending events together in the future. If they're no longer including you in their plans, it might be because they don't see the relationship going forward or they're no longer invested in it. Another possible reason is that the person may be uncertain about their own future and, as a result, is hesitant to make plans with anyone. Sometimes people struggle with major life transitions, such as career changes, personal goals, or feelings of doubt about where they want to go in life. They might pull back from making future commitments because they don't feel ready to make any decisions, or they don't want to tie themselves to someone while they figure out their own path. In this case, their reluctance to plan with you is less about the relationship itself and more about their own internal struggles, or a fear of making long-term decisions. Fear of commitment could also play a role in someone avoiding future plans. If they have a history of commitment issues, past relationship trauma, or deep-seated fears about getting too attached, they may resist making plans that imply a deeper connection. This could be especially true in relationships where one person is more emotionally invested than the other, or if there is an underlying fear that making future plans might lead to disappointment or vulnerability. In these situations, the lack of future planning isn't a reflection of how they feel about you personally, but a reflection of their discomfort with commitment or their inability to trust the longevity of the relationship. Sometimes a person may stop making future plans because they're dealing with personal or emotional issues that prevent them from thinking long-term. They may be going through a difficult time, such as experiencing depression, anxiety, or emotional burnout, which makes it hard for them to look ahead. If they feel emotionally drained or overwhelmed, they may be unable to focus on or prioritize anything that requires future planning, including plans with their partner. Their inability to plan with you may have less to do with their feelings toward you and more to do with their emotional capacity at the time. Alternatively, the lack of future plans might indicate that the relationship has reached a plateau or is no longer fulfilling. As relationships evolve, sometimes one person's needs or desires change, and they may begin to question if the relationship is still right for them. If they stop making future plans with you, it could signal that they're no longer as engaged or interested in building a future together. This can be especially hurtful if one partner is still hopeful about the relationship's potential, while the other has emotionally detached or started envisioning a future without the other person. For the person on the receiving end, the absence of future plans can be painful and confusing. It may create feelings of rejection, insecurity, or doubt about the relationship's direction. Without plans for the future, it can feel as though the relationship is stagnant or uncertain, leaving you to wonder if you're still a priority or if there is a future for the two of you together. If this change in behavior is causing concern, it's important to have an open conversation with the person about your feelings. Express how their avoidance of future plans is making you feel, and ask if there's a specific reason behind it. It may turn out that there are external factors influencing their behavior, or it may be an indication that they're uncertain about the relationship. Understanding the underlying reasons can help provide clarity and offer a way forward, whether that's working through the issue together or making decisions about the future of the relationship. 8. Their compliments have disappeared. When compliments disappear from a relationship, it can leave you feeling unseen and unappreciated. Compliments are often a way of showing affection, admiration, and respect, and they help strengthen emotional bonds. When they stop, it can feel like a shift has occurred in the dynamics of the relationship. Whether it's about appearance, achievements, or personal qualities, compliments are a form of acknowledgement that can make a person feel valued and loved. The sudden absence of them can create a sense of emotional emptiness and raise questions about the status of the connection. One possible reason for the disappearance of compliments is that the person may have become complacent or taken you for granted. In the early stages of a relationship, compliments often come naturally as both people are discovering and appreciating each other. However, As time passes, some individuals may start to assume that the other person knows how they feel or believe that their admiration no longer needs to be expressed. This complacency can create a sense of stagnation, where the initial effort to show appreciation fades. If compliments stop, it may indicate that the person is no longer actively considering the qualities that initially drew them to you, or that they've stopped making the effort to show you how much you mean to them. Another reason for the disappearance of compliments could be emotional disengagement. If someone has started to pull away emotionally or has become less invested in the relationship, they may stop offering compliments as a result. Compliments require an emotional connection to be meaningful, and when someone is emotionally distant, they may not feel the desire or inclination to express appreciation. This change can often be a subtle way of signaling that they are no longer fully present in the relationship, or that their feelings have shifted. Stress or personal challenges might also play a role in the disappearance of compliments. If someone is going through a difficult time in their life, whether due to work pressures, personal struggles, or health issues, they might become less focused on others, including their partner. When someone is consumed with their own problems, they may unintentionally stop showing the affection they once did, including giving compliments. In these situations, the lack of compliments is not necessarily a reflection of how they feel about you, but rather a result of their inability to focus on anything outside of their own emotional or mental struggles. In some cases, the disappearance of compliments may be linked to a change in the person's feelings toward the relationship. If they have grown dissatisfied or disillusioned with the connection, they may stop offering compliments as a way to withdraw or disengage. The absence of compliments can be a sign of emotional detachment, where the person no longer feels the need to express admiration or appreciation. This could be due to a variety of factors, such as unmet needs, a lack of communication, or simply the fading of affection over time. Sometimes people stop giving compliments because they feel insecure or are experiencing issues with their own self-esteem. If someone is dealing with their own internal struggles, such as feelings of inadequacy or self-doubt, they may become less likely to compliment others. This can happen when someone is struggling to feel good about themselves, and, as a result, they may withdraw from expressing positive emotions toward others. In such cases, the disappearance of compliments is more about their own emotional state than about their feelings toward you. The disappearance of compliments can also indicate a lack of communication or understanding between partners. If one person stops complimenting the other, it could be a sign that they no longer know how to express appreciation, or that they assume the other person no longer values compliments. In some relationships, the act of giving compliments may be taken for granted, and without open communication about each person's needs for positive reinforcement, one partner might stop complimenting the other altogether. For the person on the receiving end, the disappearance of compliments can be emotionally challenging. It can lead to feelings of inadequacy or confusion, especially if you've previously been accustomed to receiving regular praise or acknowledgement. Compliments help to build confidence and reinforce the connection between two people. When they stop, it can feel as though your worth or presence is no longer acknowledged, creating doubts about the relationship and your place within it. If this change is causing distress, it's important to have an honest conversation with the person about how you're feeling. Let them know that the absence of compliments is affecting you and ask if there is a specific reason for it. In some cases, the person may not even realize that they've stopped offering compliments, and a simple discussion can help bring awareness to the situation. If the lack of compliments stems from emotional disengagement, unmet needs, or a shift in the relationship, talking about these underlying issues can help both individuals understand each other better and find a way to reconnect. Ultimately, compliments are a small but powerful way of showing affection and appreciation. When they disappear, it can be a signal that something has changed in the relationship, and addressing the issue openly can help bring clarity and potentially restore the emotional connection that once existed. 9. They don't listen to you anymore. When someone stops listening to you, it can feel like a deep emotional disconnect has developed in the relationship. Listening is one of the most fundamental aspects of communication, and when it's no longer present, it can create feelings of neglect, frustration, and isolation. Whether it's a casual conversation or a serious discussion, being heard makes a person feel valued and understood. If the other person is no longer listening, it can suggest a shift in their emotional investment or interest in the relationship. One of the primary reasons someone might stop listening is emotional disengagement. If they've started to emotionally distance themselves, they may no longer feel motivated to pay attention to what you're saying. This could happen gradually, especially if there have been unresolved issues in the relationship, unmet emotional needs, or a growing sense of dissatisfaction. As people withdraw emotionally, their focus may shift away from the relationship, and they may stop engaging in meaningful conversations. In such cases, the lack of listening is a reflection of their diminishing connection to you or a lack of interest in what you have to say. Another possible reason is that the person may be overwhelmed or preoccupied with their own issues. If someone is dealing with personal stress, work pressures, or emotional struggles, they may find it difficult to focus on anything else, including conversations with others. Their inability to listen might not be a sign of disrespect or a lack of care for you, but rather a result of their own mental or emotional overload. When someone is consumed with their own thoughts and worries, they may unintentionally tune out the conversation, even if they don't want to. Sometimes the inability to listen may stem from a lack of communication skills or an unhealthy communication dynamic in the relationship. If one person in the relationship has become used to dominating the conversation or interrupting the other, it can create a situation where the other person feels like they're not being heard. In relationships with poor communication habits, one partner may stop listening because they've become accustomed to disregarding the other person's thoughts or feelings. This can lead to a sense of frustration and alienation, as the person who feels unheard may begin to withdraw or stop expressing themselves altogether. The lack of listening can also be a result of resentment or anger. If there have been ongoing conflicts or unresolved issues, one person may stop listening as a way of shutting down emotionally. This often happens when there is a sense of bitterness or frustration that hasn't been addressed. When someone feels hurt or disrespected, they might refuse to engage in meaningful communication, either because they no longer want to invest emotionally or because they feel like their perspective is no longer valued. In these situations, the refusal to listen can be a form of emotional self-protection or a passive way of signaling that they no longer want to participate in the relationship. In some cases, the person may simply be taking you for granted. In the beginning of a relationship, people often listen closely to each other, eager to learn and connect. However, as time goes on, one partner may start assuming that they know everything about the other person, and as a result, stop actively listening. This can create a sense of disconnection, as the person feels ignored or overlooked. Taking someone for granted is often an unconscious behavior, but it can lead to feelings of frustration, especially if one partner feels that their thoughts, opinions, or feelings are no longer valued. If someone isn't listening, it can also indicate that they are no longer interested in the relationship. They may have already emotionally checked out, and the lack of listening is a symptom of this detachment. People who are still emotionally invested in a relationship will make an effort to engage in conversations, show curiosity about the other person's thoughts, and provide feedback or support. When these behaviors fade, it often signals that the relationship is no longer fulfilling, or that one person is no longer emotionally present. For the person who is being ignored, the absence of listening can be hurtful and isolating. It can create a sense of loneliness, as if you're no longer seen or valued by the person you care about. This lack of engagement can also lead to frustration, as it becomes increasingly difficult to share your feelings or thoughts when they're not being acknowledged. Over time, it can erode the emotional bond in the relationship, making both parties feel disconnected and misunderstood. If you notice that the person is no longer listening to you, it's important to address the issue. One approach is to have an honest conversation about how their lack of listening is affecting you. Be clear about how it makes you feel and ask if there's a reason behind their disengagement. It could be that they're dealing with their own issues, or that there's a breakdown in communication that needs to be repaired. Sometimes opening up about your feelings can encourage the other person to reflect on their behavior and take steps to reconnect. If the issue persists and the lack of listening is part of a broader pattern of emotional neglect, it may be time to assess the overall health of the relationship. Communication is vital to any relationship, and if one person refuses to engage or listen, it can create a toxic dynamic. In such cases, it may be necessary to reevaluate the relationship and decide whether both parties are willing to put in the effort to rebuild trust and emotional connection. 10. They seem more interested in their own life. When someone starts to seem more interested in their own life than in the relationship, it can be a difficult and disheartening shift to notice. Relationships are built on mutual interest, care, and attention, and when one person starts to prioritize their individual life over the partnership, it can create feelings of neglect and disconnection. This change may not always be intentional, but it can still be very painful to experience. One of the main reasons for this shift is emotional detachment. If someone has started to pull away emotionally, they may begin focusing more on their personal interests, goals, and desires, rather than the shared goals of the relationship. This can happen gradually over time as one person becomes less emotionally invested. They might start spending more time on their own hobbies, socializing with friends, or pursuing personal projects, leaving the relationship as more of an afterthought. The person might not even realize they're doing it, but the absence of emotional connection can be noticeable to the other partner. Another possibility is that they may be going through a personal phase where they're focused on self-growth or self-discovery. People go through periods in their lives where they need to prioritize their own needs, whether it's pursuing a career goal, recovering from a past experience, or working through personal challenges. In these times, their focus naturally shifts inward, and they may be less inclined to invest in the relationship. While it's normal for people to go through such phases, it can be hurtful if the other person feels neglected or unimportant during that time. The person might also be dealing with stress or a sense of burnout. If they are overwhelmed with work, family responsibilities, or other pressures, they may start retreating into their own life as a way to cope. When someone is under stress, they may seek solitude or focus on activities that provide them with comfort or relief. This withdrawal from the relationship can sometimes make the other person feel like they're no longer a priority. They may become consumed with managing their own life and may have little energy or attention left for the relationship. Another factor could be that the person has become complacent or disinterested in the relationship itself. As relationships evolve, sometimes one partner stops putting in the effort and begins to take the other for granted. They may no longer feel the need to nurture the relationship, or may have simply lost interest. When this happens, the person starts to prioritize their own life more, focusing on activities or pursuits that bring them joy or fulfillment, leaving the other partner feeling left out. Sometimes the change in focus can indicate that the person is no longer emotionally available or committed to the relationship. They may have lost interest or begun emotionally detaching, and as a result, their investment in the relationship diminishes. This shift can be subtle at first, such as when they stop sharing their day with you or stop seeking out your company. Over time, it becomes more apparent that they are more absorbed in their own life than in the relationship, and this can lead to feelings of abandonment or neglect. If they are more focused on their own life, it might also be a sign of incompatibility or growing apart. Sometimes people change or evolve in ways that make them less aligned with their partner's values or goals. They may start realizing that they want different things out of life, whether it's related to career ambitions, personal development, or lifestyle choices. As this becomes clearer, they might naturally start to pull away from the relationship and put more energy into their individual pursuits. This shift can be difficult to accept, especially if one person still has hopes for the relationship's future. The person may also simply be unaware of the impact their behavior is having. They might not realize that their increased focus on their own life is causing emotional distance. They may think they are just going through a phase, or they may believe that the relationship is stable enough to withstand periods of neglect or emotional detachment. However, for the partner who feels neglected, it can feel like a gradual erosion of the bond that once existed. For the partner who feels sidelined, it's important to express how the shift in attention is affecting you. Communication is key in any relationship, and bringing up your feelings can help the other person understand that their behavior is creating distance between you. Ask them to share what's going on in their life and express how it makes you feel when they seem more interested in their own world than in the relationship. Sometimes this conversation can help the person recognize that they've been neglecting their partner, and they may make an effort to reconnect. If the issue persists and the person seems consistently uninterested or detached, it may be worth considering whether the relationship is still fulfilling for both parties. A healthy relationship requires mutual interest and effort, and when one person is no longer invested, it can lead to feelings of frustration and loneliness. It's important to assess whether both people are still willing to put in the work to nurture the relationship, or if it's time to re-evaluate the connection and make decisions that are in the best interest of both individuals. Ultimately, when someone starts focusing more on their own life than the relationship, it's a sign that something has shifted, and it's important to address it before it leads to further disconnection. Open communication and understanding each other's needs are essential in navigating these changes and determining the future of the relationship. 11. They make excuses not to be around. When someone starts making excuses not to be around, it can be a clear sign that something has shifted in the relationship. Initially, relationships often thrive on shared time and experiences, and being around each other is a natural part of building a connection. However, when excuses start to pile up and the person seems to avoid spending time with you, it can leave you feeling rejected, hurt, and confused. One common reason for making excuses is emotional withdrawal. When someone is no longer emotionally invested in the relationship or is starting to detach, they may subconsciously or consciously find ways to avoid being around. This can happen gradually, with the person finding small, seemingly insignificant reasons to skip out on plans or not show up. At first, it might seem like a temporary issue. Maybe they're busy with work or have personal matters to deal with. But over time, these excuses can become more frequent, leaving the other person wondering why they no longer prioritize the relationship. Sometimes, the person might be trying to avoid confrontation or difficult conversations. If there are unresolved issues or growing tension in the relationship, one person might make excuses to not be around as a way of avoiding dealing with the problem. Rather than addressing the discomfort or having a difficult conversation, they might choose to distance themselves instead. In these cases, the excuses often stem from a desire to avoid emotional confrontation, but they can also signal a lack of willingness to work through the challenges in the relationship. Another reason for making excuses could be that the person is overwhelmed or stressed in other areas of their life. If they're dealing with personal or professional challenges, they may start to retreat into themselves and use these external pressures as a reason not to spend time with you. While it's completely normal for someone to need space when they're under stress, constantly using stress as an excuse to avoid the relationship can be a way of emotionally distancing themselves. In these cases, the person might feel like they don't have the energy or emotional capacity to nurture the relationship, so they opt to focus on themselves. Sometimes, the excuses are a sign of complacency or disinterest in the relationship. People in long-term relationships might sometimes take their partner for granted, assuming that the relationship is secure enough to endure without much effort. As a result, one partner might stop making an effort to spend time together, assuming that the other will always be there. In these cases, the excuses for not being around might be subtle but frequent, like "I'm too tired" or "I have other plans." even when there's no genuine reason behind them. The lack of effort can be a sign that the person has stopped valuing the relationship as much as they once did. If the person is becoming emotionally or physically distant, making excuses to avoid time together can also be a sign of them growing apart. This could be due to a change in their interests, priorities, or feelings toward the relationship. When people grow apart, they may stop seeking out shared experiences or quality time because they're no longer emotionally connected. They might start looking for reasons not to spend time together, even if they don't actively realize it. The excuses, in this case, are a reflection of the distance growing between the two individuals. The person might also be avoiding intimacy or emotional closeness. When someone is trying to avoid being around, it could be because they don't want to open up emotionally or are not comfortable with the vulnerability that comes with closeness. They might be shutting down, either because they're afraid of being hurt or because they no longer feel emotionally safe in the relationship. In these situations, making excuses not to be around is often a defense mechanism used to protect themselves from emotional discomfort or the fear of intimacy. In some cases, the excuses might be a symptom of a more serious issue, like infidelity or a deeper dissatisfaction with the relationship. If someone is regularly making excuses to avoid spending time with their partner, it could indicate that they are investing their time and energy elsewhere, either emotionally or physically. While this is a more extreme possibility, it is something to consider if the excuses start to feel particularly insincere or avoidant. For the person who feels left behind, constantly hearing excuses can create feelings of rejection, confusion, and frustration. It can make you feel like you're not important enough for the person to prioritize. The lack of effort and attention can lead to doubts about the relationship's future, leaving you questioning whether the person still cares. When excuses become a regular pattern, it can be difficult to understand where you stand in the relationship and whether the bond is still strong. If you notice that the person is frequently making excuses not to be around, it's important to address the issue. Having an open and honest conversation about how the excuses are affecting you can help bring awareness to the situation. Let them know how it makes you feel when they avoid spending time together, and ask if there's something going on that's causing this shift. In some cases, the person might not even realize the impact of their behavior, and talking about it can help them understand how their actions are affecting the relationship. However, if the excuses continue and become a consistent pattern, it may be a sign that the relationship is no longer fulfilling, or that the person is no longer emotionally invested. In such cases, it may be necessary to evaluate the relationship's future and decide whether both people are willing to put in the effort to reconnect. Relationships require mutual effort, and if one person is consistently making excuses to avoid the relationship, it can be a sign of deeper issues that need to be addressed. 12. You feel emotionally drained. When you start to feel emotionally drained in a relationship, it can be a sign that something is out of balance. Relationships should ideally offer support, fulfillment, and mutual care. But when one person consistently feels exhausted or overwhelmed, it often reflects an underlying issue that is not being addressed. Emotional drain can manifest in different ways, but it usually stems from a lack of emotional reciprocity, neglect, or unresolved tensions. If you feel emotionally drained, it's important to identify the root causes and understand the impact it's having on your well-being. One of the most common reasons for feeling emotionally drained in a relationship is the imbalance in effort or emotional investment. If one person is constantly giving while the other is taking or is emotionally unavailable, the giver can quickly become overwhelmed. This happens when you're the one always offering support, comfort, or understanding, but the other person doesn't provide the same level of care or attention. Over time, this unequal exchange can leave you feeling exhausted, as though you're constantly pouring from an empty cup. The emotional load becomes too heavy to carry, and without any reciprocation, it can lead to burnout. Another cause for emotional drain is when the relationship becomes toxic. If there's constant drama, negativity, or emotional manipulation, it can leave you feeling drained without you even realizing it. Toxic relationships are often characterized by patterns of manipulation, guilt-tripping, or passive-aggressive behavior. If you're in a relationship where you're always walking on eggshells, trying to please the other person, or dealing with constant conflict, it can sap your emotional energy. You may feel like you're constantly trying to fix things, make the other person happy, or avoid triggering their anger or frustration. This kind of emotional stress can be exhausting, leaving you feeling drained and depleted. Similarly, unresolved conflict or ongoing issues that haven't been addressed can contribute significantly to emotional exhaustion. When problems in the relationship are swept under the rug or ignored, they don't go away. Instead, they build up over time, creating emotional weight that you carry. Every interaction or conversation may start to feel like an uphill battle, especially if you're not getting the closure or resolution you need. Even routine exchanges may feel more like a chore, as the underlying tensions create a constant emotional burden. This sense of unresolved issues can make everything feel more difficult and emotionally taxing than it needs to be. Sometimes feeling emotionally drained is a result of neglect or emotional abandonment. If the other person is disengaged or no longer emotionally available, you may find yourself putting in more effort just to keep the connection alive. When you're the only one trying to maintain emotional closeness, it can feel like a constant struggle. You may feel like you're doing all the emotional labor, listening, offering support, or trying to connect, while the other person is absent or indifferent. This imbalance can quickly leave you feeling emotionally depleted, as it requires an immense amount of energy to keep the relationship going when the other person isn't contributing in the same way. Another factor that can lead to emotional exhaustion is the constant need to cater to the other person's needs while neglecting your own. If you're always putting the other person first, sacrificing your own desires and emotions for the sake of their happiness or well-being, it can eventually take a toll. Self-neglect can feel like a natural response when you're trying to nurture the relationship, but over time, it can lead to feelings of resentment and depletion. You may feel like your emotional needs are being ignored, or that your own feelings and desires are being sidelined. This imbalance can make you feel like you're constantly giving, but never receiving the care and support you need in return. If the person you're in a relationship with has become emotionally distant or disengaged, it can leave you questioning the state of the relationship. This emotional distance may make you feel like you're constantly chasing after something that's no longer there, whether it's affection, attention, or connection. If the other person isn't willing to invest emotionally, it can lead to feelings of abandonment or rejection. When you're left to deal with all of these emotions on your own, it can leave you feeling drained as you try to navigate through the emotional landscape of the relationship without the support or understanding you need. Sometimes the emotional drain might stem from a lack of communication or understanding in the relationship. If you feel like your needs, feelings, or thoughts aren't being heard or validated, it can create an emotional imbalance. Communication is essential in any relationship, and when it breaks down, it can leave one person feeling isolated or misunderstood. If you're not able to communicate openly and honestly with the other person, it can make every conversation feel exhausting. Trying to explain yourself over and over again without getting the understanding or response you need can be emotionally taxing. In some cases, the emotional drain can stem from a sense of being stuck in the relationship. If you're in a situation where you're not sure whether to stay or leave, it can cause a lot of emotional turmoil. The uncertainty and inner conflict can create a constant state of emotional tension. You may feel pulled in two directions, wanting to make the relationship work, but also feeling emotionally drained from trying. This sense of being stuck can exacerbate the emotional exhaustion, as you feel torn between wanting to fix things and needing to protect your own well-being. If you're feeling emotionally drained in the relationship, it's important to take a step back and assess the situation. It's essential to recognize that emotional drain isn't something you should have to endure. If you're constantly feeling overwhelmed, exhausted, or depleted. It may be a sign that the relationship is unhealthy or that you're not getting the emotional support you need. It's vital to prioritize your emotional health and well-being. And if the relationship is consistently leaving you drained, it might be worth considering whether it's time to have an honest conversation about your needs, or even reevaluate the relationship altogether. If the emotional drain is coming from a lack of balance, communication, or emotional support, having a candid conversation about the issues at hand can sometimes help. However, if the drain is due to deeper issues like neglect or toxicity, it may be necessary to set boundaries or take a break to regain your emotional equilibrium. No matter the cause, it's important to recognize when you're feeling drained and to take steps to protect your emotional health. 13. They show less empathy. When someone starts to show less empathy in a relationship, it can be a deeply troubling and confusing experience. Empathy is the ability to understand and share the feelings of another person, and it is a cornerstone of emotional connection. In healthy relationships, empathy fosters closeness, mutual respect, and emotional support. When that empathy begins to fade, it can create a sense of emotional distance, making the relationship feel less fulfilling and more one-sided. A sudden or gradual decrease in empathy may manifest in several ways. For example, your partner might stop acknowledging your emotional struggles or fail to offer support when you're going through a difficult time. They may seem indifferent to your feelings, even when you're clearly upset or in need of comfort. Instead of offering reassurance or attempting to understand what you're going through, they may respond with indifference, frustration, or even irritation. This lack of emotional responsiveness can be hurtful, especially if you've come to expect understanding and compassion from them. One reason why someone might show less empathy is that they have become emotionally exhausted or overwhelmed in their own life. If they are dealing with stress, personal challenges, or emotional pain, they may struggle to offer the same level of empathy that they once did. While it's natural for people to have times when they're less emotionally available, a prolonged period of emotional detachment can signal that the person is withdrawing. When this happens, the person may not be able to fully tune into your feelings, as their own emotional needs or struggles take precedence. In these situations, the emotional disconnect may not be intentional, but it still leaves you feeling unsupported and alone. Another possible explanation for a lack of empathy is emotional burnout or relationship fatigue. Sometimes, if a relationship has been difficult or strained for a long time, one or both partners can start to emotionally shut down as a form of self-preservation. This can happen when communication is poor, conflicts are unresolved, or there's a pattern of emotional neglect. Over time, one partner might feel as though their efforts to connect, care, or nurture the relationship are unappreciated or ignored. In response, they may stop trying as hard to be empathetic, believing that their efforts are futile or that they are being taken for granted. This gradual withdrawal of emotional investment can lead to a noticeable decrease in empathy toward each other. A lack of empathy can also signal that the person is no longer emotionally invested in the relationship. In relationships that are emotionally fulfilling, both partners are able to feel each other's emotions and respond with understanding and care. However, when someone begins to pull away or lose interest, they may no longer feel compelled to engage with your feelings. They may seem detached, unable to relate to your struggles or joys in the way they once did. This emotional disengagement can leave you feeling like you're no longer important to them, or that they don't care about your emotional well-being. Sometimes, a decrease in empathy may reflect a deeper issue, such as selfishness or self-centeredness. If the person becomes more focused on their own needs, desires, and concerns, they may have less capacity for understanding or connecting with your emotions. In relationships where one person is predominantly self-absorbed, empathy tends to diminish because the person is more concerned with their own experiences than with the feelings of others. When empathy fades, it can feel like the relationship has become one-sided, with one person constantly giving emotional support while the other only takes. Another reason someone might show less empathy is if they've become emotionally closed off or distant due to past trauma or negative experiences. People who have been hurt in the past or have experienced significant emotional wounds may struggle to open up or connect with others on an empathetic level. If your partner has unresolved issues from their past, it can create emotional barriers that prevent them from fully understanding or sharing in your feelings. Over time, these emotional walls can grow, and they may struggle to empathize with your needs, even if they care for you deeply. In some cases, a decrease in empathy can be linked to a change in the person's attitude or perspective toward the relationship itself. If someone no longer views the relationship as important, or if they've started to mentally or emotionally detach, their empathy may diminish as a result. They might no longer feel the same sense of responsibility or emotional commitment to you, which can lead them to disregard your feelings or minimize your needs. This shift in attitude can often be subtle, but over time, it can erode the emotional foundation of the relationship. When empathy fades, it can have a profound impact on both individuals in the relationship. For the person who feels emotionally neglected, it can be incredibly painful to realize that the other person no longer seems to care about their feelings. It may feel like you're living in an emotional vacuum, where your needs and emotions are ignored or dismissed. You might begin to doubt your own worth in the relationship, questioning whether the other person values you or even understands you anymore. This emotional disconnect can lead to feelings of isolation, sadness, and confusion, as you struggle to figure out why the other person has become so distant. For the person who has become less empathetic, it's important to reflect on the reasons behind this change. Sometimes people aren't aware that they're pulling away or becoming less emotionally available. They may be caught up in their own issues or might not even realize the impact their behavior is having on their partner. However, it's crucial for the health of the relationship that both partners remain emotionally engaged and attuned to each other's needs. If someone is struggling to offer empathy, it might be an indication that they need to address their own emotional state or confront the issues that are causing the disconnect. If you notice that your partner is showing less empathy, it's important to communicate openly about how it's affecting you. Express your feelings honestly, letting them know that you feel emotionally unsupported. In some cases, this conversation might help the person become more aware of their behavior and encourage them to make changes. If the decrease in empathy is due to external stress or personal issues, offering understanding and support might help them regain their emotional connection with you. However, if the lack of empathy is part of a broader pattern of neglect or disengagement, it may be necessary to reassess the relationship and consider whether both partners are still invested in creating a healthy emotional bond. Empathy is a critical component of any relationship. When it's lacking, it can create emotional distance, making it hard to feel connected or valued. Addressing the issue early on and fostering open communication can help prevent further emotional disconnect and preserve the emotional health of the relationship. 14. They stop sharing their thoughts or feelings. When someone stops sharing their thoughts or feelings, it can create a significant barrier in the relationship. Communication is the foundation of any strong connection, and when it becomes one-sided or absent, it can lead to feelings of isolation and confusion. If your partner suddenly becomes less open about their inner world, it may raise concerns about their emotional availability or the state of the relationship. This shift can happen gradually or abruptly, but either way, it signals a change in the way the person engages with you. One common reason for this behavior is emotional withdrawal. When a person starts to emotionally detach from a relationship, they may begin to keep their thoughts and feelings to themselves. This withdrawal could stem from a variety of factors: stress, frustration, or even dissatisfaction with the relationship. If the individual feels overwhelmed by their own emotions or feels disconnected from you, they might find it difficult to open up, either because they fear judgment, rejection, or simply because they no longer feel emotionally invested in the connection. Sometimes the lack of sharing comes from a place of fear or insecurity. If someone has been hurt in the past Whether in a previous relationship or even within the current one, they may start to build emotional walls to protect themselves. They might stop being vulnerable, afraid that their feelings will be dismissed or misunderstood. In these cases, the silence isn't necessarily a sign of disinterest, but rather a defense mechanism. However, this can still have a negative impact on the relationship, as it creates emotional distance and prevents both partners from truly understanding each other. Another reason for a person stopping the sharing of thoughts and feelings could be a loss of trust. If trust has been broken in the relationship, whether through betrayal, dishonesty, or other actions, it can lead to a breakdown in communication. When trust erodes, people often stop being open and transparent, fearing that their thoughts or emotions might be used against them. This lack of openness creates a disconnect, leaving both partners feeling like they're no longer on the same page. Additionally, the person might be dealing with personal struggles or internal conflicts that they feel are too difficult or personal to share. They may not want to burden their partner with their problems, or they might feel embarrassed or ashamed about what they're going through. In these cases, the lack of sharing isn't necessarily a reflection of the relationship, but rather an indication of the individual's struggle with their own emotions or mental health. However, it still leads to an emotional disconnect, as one partner is left in the dark about the other's inner world. When someone stops sharing, it can also signal a growing emotional distance. Relationships thrive on emotional closeness, and when a person no longer feels comfortable sharing their thoughts, it often means they no longer feel safe or understood. This can be a red flag that they no longer trust or feel a connection with their partner. The absence of these shared moments, whether it's about daily thoughts, deeper emotions, or even future dreams, can create a sense of emptiness and leave one person wondering whether the relationship is still a priority for the other. In some cases, a lack of communication comes from the person simply losing interest in the relationship. If one partner has checked out emotionally or is no longer invested, they might stop sharing because they no longer see a need to. The relationship might feel less important, or they may have already started emotionally distancing themselves. This can be incredibly painful for the other person, who may feel rejected or abandoned, as they are left to navigate the relationship without any insight into what the other person is truly thinking or feeling. The impact of one person stopping to share their thoughts and feelings can be profound. It often leads to confusion, frustration, and even resentment. The partner, who is left in the dark, may feel unheard or unimportant, questioning why the other person is no longer open or willing to communicate. This can lead to feelings of loneliness and neglect, as communication is one of the primary ways to maintain emotional intimacy and connection. When that's taken away, it can feel like a key part of the relationship is missing. Addressing this issue requires open and compassionate communication. If you notice that your partner has stopped sharing, it's important to create a safe space where they feel comfortable opening up. Gently express how their lack of sharing affects you, without sounding accusatory. Let them know that you're there to listen and support them, and that you value their thoughts and feelings. It's important to approach the situation with empathy, understanding that there may be deeper reasons for their silence. If the person is dealing with personal struggles or emotional pain, offering patience and support can help them feel more comfortable opening up. However, if the lack of communication stems from a more serious issue, like emotional withdrawal or a loss of interest in the relationship, it may require a deeper conversation about the future of the relationship. In some cases, seeking professional help or couples counseling can help both partners explore the underlying issues and rebuild trust and communication. Ultimately, when someone stops sharing their thoughts or feelings, it's a sign that something is off. It's important to address it early on, as prolonged emotional silence can lead to further disconnect and hurt. The key is to foster a space where both partners feel safe to be vulnerable and open, ensuring that communication remains a priority in maintaining a healthy, balanced relationship. 15. They don't support your dreams or goals. When someone no longer supports your dreams or goals, It can be a painful realization that the emotional and motivational foundation of your relationship may be shifting. Support in a relationship, whether it's encouragement for personal aspirations, career goals, or life dreams, is essential for maintaining a strong, nurturing bond. Partners who believe in each other's potential and encourage personal growth create a sense of teamwork and mutual respect. But when this support starts to fade, it can feel isolating and disheartening. There are several reasons why someone might stop supporting their partner's dreams or goals. One of the most common causes is a shift in priorities. Over time, personal or external circumstances can change, and sometimes this results in a shift in how one person perceives their role in the relationship. If a partner becomes more focused on their own goals or challenges, they might become less aware or concerned about the other person's dreams. This shift can sometimes come from a place of self-absorption or from the pressure of dealing with personal problems, leaving little emotional energy for supporting others. In some cases, a partner's lack of support can arise from jealousy or insecurity. If one person is experiencing success or striving for ambitious goals, the other might feel threatened or envious. This insecurity can cause them to distance themselves emotionally, and instead of supporting their partner's dreams, they may inadvertently undermine them. This might manifest as subtle comments that diminish the importance of your goals, or they might show little interest in your progress. Rather than feeling like your biggest cheerleader, they may start acting as though your dreams are secondary to their own, creating emotional distance and resentment. Another possibility is that the person may not share the same vision for the future, which can create a disconnect. If you and your partner have different long-term goals or values, it can be difficult for one person to fully support the other's dreams. For example, if one partner wants to travel the world, while the other wants to settle down and build a family, there might be a natural tension between those goals. In such situations, the partner who is less invested in the dream might start to show a lack of support, as they might not understand why the goal is important or how it aligns with their own vision for the future. This difference in aspirations doesn't necessarily mean that the relationship is doomed, but it does require understanding and open communication to navigate. A partner may also stop supporting your dreams because of a change in their own feelings about the relationship. If someone begins to feel disconnected or disengaged, they might no longer feel motivated to be a supportive partner. This lack of enthusiasm for your goals can stem from emotional fatigue or a sense of disillusionment in the relationship. They may start to view your aspirations as burdensome or irrelevant, rather than something to celebrate and encourage. In some cases, this can be a sign that they are emotionally withdrawing or no longer see a future with you, and as a result, they stop prioritizing your needs or supporting your endeavors. When your partner no longer supports your dreams, it can be devastating. Dreams and goals are often deeply tied to a person's sense of self-worth and identity. And when they're not recognized or supported by the person you care about, it can lead to feelings of inadequacy or loneliness. You might start to question whether your goals are worthwhile, or if they'll ever be achieved without the encouragement and support of your partner. This lack of support can make you feel isolated in your journey, as if you're fighting alone to accomplish what you've set out to do. Furthermore, the lack of support can strain communication in the relationship. If your partner no longer shows interest in your dreams, it can lead to a sense of emotional detachment. You may feel like your aspirations are unimportant to them, which can create resentment and frustration. This, in turn, may lead you to withdraw or stop sharing your goals altogether, fearing that they will be dismissed or criticized. When this happens, it can cause a breakdown in trust and understanding, leading to further distance between both partners. To address this issue, it's essential to communicate openly about how you're feeling. Share with your partner the importance of your dreams and goals and how their lack of support is affecting you. Sometimes people may not realize the impact of their actions and may not know that their lack of encouragement is causing hurt. Expressing your feelings calmly and clearly can help them understand the depth of your emotions and potentially reignite their support for your journey. However, it's also important to assess whether this lack of support is part of a larger pattern in the relationship. If your partner is consistently unsupportive or dismissive of your dreams, despite your efforts to communicate, it may indicate deeper issues within the relationship, such as a lack of respect, understanding, or investment in each other's futures. In these cases, it may be necessary to reevaluate whether both partners are aligned in terms of long-term goals and emotional support. Sometimes, the lack of support may reflect a deeper issue of personal discontentment within the relationship. If one person is no longer happy or fulfilled in the relationship, they might struggle to support their partner's dreams because they feel disconnected or uninterested in the future together. This can be a difficult realization, but it's important to understand that both partners need to be committed to each other's happiness and growth for the relationship to thrive. In any case, if you feel that your partner is no longer supporting your dreams, it's vital to consider how this impacts your self-esteem, happiness, and personal growth. Your dreams are important, and you deserve to have someone by your side who believes in you and encourages you to pursue what makes you feel fulfilled. If the relationship isn't offering that support, it may be necessary to reconsider its viability and whether both partners are truly invested in each other's long-term happiness. In healthy relationships, both partners should be each other's biggest supporters, lifting each other up and helping each other achieve their dreams. If that dynamic is missing, it can leave one person feeling unsupported, unappreciated, and disconnected. Addressing this lack of support early on is key to maintaining a strong and fulfilling connection, where both partners feel valued and motivated to pursue their individual and shared goals. 16. They don't make an effort to resolve issues. When a partner stops making an effort to resolve issues in the relationship, it can signify a major shift in their emotional investment and commitment. Healthy relationships require continuous work from both parties, especially when challenges arise. Resolving conflicts, addressing concerns, and finding solutions together are key components of maintaining a strong connection. However, when one partner no longer seems willing to engage in resolving problems, it can lead to feelings of frustration, helplessness, and disillusionment. There are many reasons why someone might stop trying to resolve issues in a relationship. One possibility is emotional burnout. If a person feels emotionally drained from the ongoing struggles, or if they've been dealing with issues for a long time without resolution, they might eventually give up trying. This can happen when the same problems keep resurfacing and neither partner seems to be able to make progress. The person might start feeling like no matter what they do, nothing will change, leading them to disengage from trying to fix the situation. Another reason for not resolving issues could be a lack of communication skills. Some people are not equipped with the tools to effectively communicate about problems. When they feel uncomfortable or overwhelmed by conflict, they may choose to avoid it altogether, hoping that the problem will resolve on its own or that it will simply go away. This avoidance, however, can create even more tension as the issues remain unresolved and start to fester. In some cases, a person may stop making an effort to resolve issues because they've already emotionally checked out of the relationship. When one partner begins to lose interest, either emotionally or physically, they may no longer feel motivated to engage in discussions or solutions. They might view the problems as a reflection of deeper issues within the relationship or as a sign that the relationship is no longer worth saving. As a result, they may stop trying altogether, leaving the other partner to deal with the situation on their own. Alternatively, the lack of effort to resolve issues may come from a place of apathy or indifference. If one partner has become complacent or disconnected, they might not feel emotionally invested in finding solutions. They may no longer care enough to work through problems or to put in the effort required to rebuild trust and understanding. This can be especially painful for the other person, who may feel as though their concerns or needs are not being acknowledged or valued. Sometimes one partner may refuse to resolve issues because they feel that they are always the one compromising or giving in. This dynamic can occur in relationships where one person constantly sacrifices their own desires, beliefs, or feelings to keep the peace, while the other person remains indifferent or takes the relationship for granted. If the partner who has been making all the effort becomes frustrated with the lack of reciprocation, they may stop trying to fix the problems entirely. A refusal to resolve issues can also stem from a lack of respect or understanding. If one partner doesn't respect the other's opinions, feelings, or needs, they may feel that the issues don't deserve attention or aren't important enough to address. This lack of respect can manifest in dismissive behavior, such as belittling the other person's concerns, invalidating their emotions, or avoiding difficult conversations altogether. When conflicts are left unresolved, it can lead to a build-up of resentment. As one partner continues to ignore the issues, the other may begin to feel increasingly hurt, rejected, and unheard. These unresolved problems can start to feel like an ongoing weight in the relationship, creating distance between both partners. Eventually, this resentment can cause further emotional detachment, making it even harder to address the underlying issues. Another potential reason why someone may avoid resolving issues is fear of confrontation or failure. If a partner is afraid of conflict or doesn't believe they can handle difficult conversations, they may simply avoid them altogether. In such cases, the person might retreat inwardly, rather than face the discomfort of working through issues. While this avoidance may provide temporary relief, it can ultimately lead to a breakdown in communication and an inability to move forward in the relationship. Not making an effort to resolve issues also signals a lack of commitment to the relationship. Healthy, lasting relationships require both partners to actively engage in overcoming challenges and making adjustments for the greater good of the connection. When one person refuses to put in that effort, it can leave the other partner feeling unsupported and alone in the relationship. The impact of this behavior is often significant. Over time, the partner who is more invested in solving the issues may start to feel exhausted, unappreciated, and neglected. They may begin questioning whether the relationship is worth maintaining if the other person is unwilling to meet them halfway. This emotional imbalance can lead to increased frustration, anger, and eventually a sense of emotional isolation. In order to address this issue, it's important to have an open, honest conversation with your partner. Express how their lack of effort in resolving issues is affecting you and the relationship as a whole. It's crucial to approach the conversation with empathy and understanding, rather than anger or frustration, as this can encourage a more productive discussion. Asking your partner about their feelings or concerns may reveal deeper issues that need to be addressed, and it can also provide an opportunity for both of you to work together toward a solution. If the person continues to resist efforts to resolve conflicts, it may signal that the relationship is no longer a priority for them. In such cases, it may be necessary to re-evaluate the relationship and whether both partners are still committed to making it work. Sometimes professional help, such as couples counseling, can be a valuable resource for navigating these challenges and rebuilding communication. In any healthy relationship, both partners should be willing to address problems and resolve issues together. If one person consistently avoids or refuses to engage in this process, it can lead to a breakdown in the relationship, causing both partners to feel emotionally disconnected and unsatisfied. By addressing these issues early on and ensuring that both people are committed to finding solutions, a relationship can grow stronger and more resilient in the face of challenges.